Now, Mr. Ambassador, what do you make of that? And does that really perhaps give you a blueprint for future relations that you are trying to, at the moment, cultivate in this region?
Well, I think it's an example and illustration of a couple key strengths between the United States and Japan. I do believe that if you look at this area, I think energy security and reliability are going to be essential to the next 20 years. The United States has that type of capacity. I think the president's investment in moving America in 2030 and 2050 towards its goals on climate, make the EV market in the auto transportation one of the hottest market. That public investment is bringing a tremendous amount of private investment. And I also think that if you look going forward, international trade is going to be replaced from cost and efficiency as the driving factors to stability and sustainability as the driving factors. And there's no two better examples and partners and allies and friends than the United States and Japan. And for the last 3 years, the United States and Japan have been directly to each other the #1 foreign direct investor in each other's country. And we're well on a pace, given this type of investment, the Panasonic investment, to making it 4 out of 4 years.
And Ambassador, maybe talk us through what the conversations you've been having in Japan and how the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, what impact has that had on Japanese companies when they're thinking about maybe assembling cars in the U.S. or even building a factory there?
Well, the way I look at it is globally, I mean, take a more comprehensive look. One, start with the infrastructure investment. Second, the CHIPS Act, and then the Inflation Reduction Act. All three of them have an energy component and a research and development component that looks to the future and invests in the future. And Japan companies that have a strong footprint already are building on that footprint because the public investments in the United States future and its productivity bring in the type of private investment you want to see that Panasonic, Honda, Toyota all represent, and also the semiconductors. But I do want to say that also goes the other way, which is Micron just the other day announced a major investment here in Japan with the support of the Japanese government in their plant in Hiroshima. And so to me, the Biden administration's investment, the biggest untapped market for the United States, while we want to see and sell overseas, is the United States market. And the investments in infrastructure, CHIPS Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act give you the contours of making America the top priority investment because those public dollars unleash about 5 or 6 private dollars. Second, our abundance of energy and a portfolio from nuclear to natural gas to renewables also give private companies the security, the reliability to make those type of investments that don't exist around the world. So the United States and Japan are exactly the right type of partners to invest in the future, seize the future. And I think that given the companies in Japan that are seeing American market that way, that's a real strong card for the United States to play.
Yeah, and Mr. Ambassador, of course, that probably applies to South Korea too. So what it does seem is as though you're embedding relations, deepening relations, I guess, with those two. And critics would say it's just a way of perhaps isolating China further. How do you respond?
Well, here's what I think. I mean, I think there are post-COVID, post-China's coercion, post the war, globalized commercial diplomacy is transforming. Cost and efficiency used to be the driving factors. Today, stability and sustainability are the North Stars. Second, it used to be always about market access. While that's still important, energy reliability and security is going to be the defining factor of the next 20 years. It used to be third, how much you sold, that counts, but the real measure today is how much data you collect. And it's clear that when you look at what Korean companies in Korea is doing, Japanese companies, the Japanese government, the United States, those factors that I think are going to define international trade and commercial diplomacy going forward means that our allies and our partners are going to invest in each other's future because it has all the things that both countries and those companies in those countries see as a more promising future. You are not going to pick a country to expand and do CapEx that could be one day on the sanctions list. It's just not going to happen. And that's what's...
Ambassador, I have to ask you...
Also, think about it.
Yeah.
Sure.
I was going to ask you about the CHIPS rules that the Biden administration just laid out last week. that also impacts your allies as well.
Yeah.
In particular, some of these big chip manufacturers like South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. What kind of feedback are you getting from these countries? Are you willing to punish them if they do try to skirt around these curbs, or will you be giving more exemptions?
Well, you work with allies before you ever get to the level of a punishment. So even before you start, and that's unusual for a middle child to say that. So I would just say to you, 2 weeks ago, the Vice President of the United States was in Japan, and we brought together a round table of chip manufacturers and also people, suppliers. And Japan has an incredible leadership role in what I call the supply chain of the supply chain, which is in and around the chips supply chain. There's a group now meeting with our Commerce Secretary to understand the opportunities that exist from that CHIPS Act. So they're actually seeing that as an opportunity, not only in the support of expanding their footprint in the United States, but there's a tremendous amount of research and development dollars that it can be opportunity, but they come with, appropriately, strings attached, which is you're going to invest in countries and in companies in areas of the United States, and you can't do that with people that are going to not just be competitors is one thing, but people who cheat the system. And that's appropriate for the United States to do because it's out of our national security self-interest. And our allies understand that and also want to be part of that future. And that's America realizing and using not only its investment, but doing it from a strategic perspective where our allies are a partner of that effort.
Mr. Ambassador, Lord Palmerston said, former Prime Minister of Britain, said that a country, to do a country's foreign policy, you have to look at their trade policy. Now, in terms of trade, what else are you doing? What other industries are you looking at the moment to actually perhaps deepen your ties with allies in the region?
Well, I think, first of all, there's a lot that we're doing. I mean, one illustration, an example, we had worked through USTR, Commerce, the embassy. We worked through an issue on beef that had been a problem, and now the United States is the largest exporter of beef to Japan, which had been a problem in the past. We had done certain other areas, but you look at it comprehensively. You look at energy as an opportunity. You look at areas of space and technology as an area. You look at the auto industry. You look at technology as it relates to chips, microchips in that area. You look at all specters. One of the most promising nuclear SMR technology is an individual company that came out of the national labs in Idaho, and the two biggest investors in the company are Japanese investors. It's a promising technology to look to be as whether it would actually be marketable. Those are areas where you co-invest. Japan has a leadership way ahead of the rest of the world on hydrogen. There's a lot of opportunities in the United States. The Department of Energy just leased, I think, about $5 to $7 billion in research dollars in hydrogen locations. Japanese companies can be incredibly competitive for those resources in building things in the United States that become an energy resource for the rest of the world.
Which brings us back to this joint venture with Honda, and these Japanese automakers are really throwing a lot of dollar amounts into investment, along with some pretty ambitious goals of EV transition as well. Is there a concern, Ambassador, that this amount of spending doesn't justify, given that maybe the level of demand and time frame don't quite match?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I think that, and there's a lot smarter people on this space, but there's a lot of investments in the EV future. There are certain auto companies, specifically here from Japan, that are investing in the U.S. market that see a hybrid model. And then there's a lot of other companies that are holding on a little more on the older kind of engine and a transition to a different type of engine. That's going to be the promise of the United States market. I do think the question goes to, do you have all the resources, both for the battery and the type of chemicals and materials that go into it? Legitimate question. There's much smarter people than myself that can look to the future and understand what the resource capacity is to support that market. The good news is, for a long time, the United States was basically idling in neutral. We're now seizing the future, and major companies from Japan are investing that future in the United States, where we'll continue to be the dominant lead in the transition to a more energy efficient and a more energy capable transition that's climate friendly and job friendly.